The twin suns of planet Varela burned bright over endless golden grass. The air shimmered with heat and every sound echoed like it came from far away. A human explorer named Eli walked carefully, his boots crushing tall yellow blades that reached his waist. He was alone, mapping this strange world for future settlers. It was supposed to be empty. No cities, no life, just wild land. But today something felt different. Eli stopped. He heard it again. A faint sound, high and quick, almost like a whistle or a cry. It came from ahead, beyond a small hill. His hand reached for the plasma knife on his belt. "Probably just wind," he whispered, though his voice shook slightly. He climbed the hill one slow step at a time. Then he saw them. At first he thought they were insects, small glowing shapes running between the grass. But when he looked closer, his heart stopped. They were people, tiny people, no taller than his hand. Their skin shimmered like polished stone, and their eyes glowed in soft colors, blue, green, and silver. Each one carried a small spear that looked more like a toothpick to him, but they weren't running from him. They were running toward him because something huge was chasing them. Out of the grass came a massive creature with long claws and 4 eyes glowing red. It looked like a mix between a lizard and a spider, its mouth opening wide with sharp, wet teeth. The tiny aliens screamed in panic, their voices like bells. One of them tripped and fell. Eli didn't think. He ran. He jumped between the monster and the small creatures. The alien beast hissed, slashing its claws at him. He rolled to the side, the ground shaking under its weight. With one quick move, Eli activated his plasma knife. The blade lit up blue. He slashed at the creature's leg. It screeched and swung again. The impact sent him flying backward into the grass. Pain exploded in his shoulder, but he stood up. "Not today," he growled. He grabbed a broken metal rod from his pack, something he had picked up earlier. With both hands, he drove it into the creature's neck. The smell of burning filled the air as plasma energy burned through its flesh. The monster screamed one last time and fell, shaking the ground so hard that dust rose in waves. For a moment, there was silence. Then, he heard small footsteps. The tiny aliens came closer, forming a half circle around the giant human. They looked up at him with wide, glowing eyes. One of them, slightly taller than the others, stepped forward and bowed deeply. "You saved us," it said in a soft, musical voice. Its words were broken but understandable. "You are the giant protector." Eli breathed heavily, wiping sweat from his forehead. He looked down at them, amazed. "You can talk?" he said softly. The little alien nodded. Its head had small silver horns that sparkled in the sunlight. "We speak little. We think much. You help. We live," Eli smiled. "You're welcome, little ones." "What were those things?" "Hunters," said the alien. Its face darkened. "They come again and again. They eat us, destroy our homes. You strong. You can stop them." Eli frowned. "I'm just one man," he said quietly. But when he saw the tiny creature's scared faces, something inside him changed. He couldn't just leave them. He crouched low, resting on one knee to meet their eye level. "All right," he said. "Take me to your village. Maybe I can help." The small aliens looked at each other, whispering in their soft, chiming language. Then the leader nodded. "Follow. We show you safe place." They started walking through the grass, their small glowing bodies lighting the path. Eli followed carefully, making sure his steps didn't crush the ground too hard. He noticed how their skin shimmered differently under the twin suns, like living crystals. As they moved deeper into the fields, Eli felt eyes on him. He turned around, scanning the distance, but saw nothing. Still, the feeling stayed. The wind was too quiet now. The golden grass swayed gently, but something about it felt wrong. When they reached a small hill with giant roots twisting above the soil, the little aliens disappeared through a narrow opening. Eli had to crawl to fit inside. The tunnel led to a wide underground chamber glowing with blue moss. Small houses, no bigger than teacups, lined the walls. The air smelled of nectar and metal. Dozens of tiny aliens appeared, curious but cautious. They pointed at him, whispering words he couldn't understand. The leader raised his small hand. "No fear," he said. "The giant is friend." Eli smiled and sat carefully near the entrance. His body filled the space like a mountain. He finally relaxed, but only for a moment. Outside, through the narrow tunnel, he saw movement. 2 red eyes blinked in the distance. Then a second pair. The hunters were back. Watching. Waiting. Eli's hand tightened on his knife. He whispered, Looks like this isn't over yet. Eli woke up to the soft sound of whispers. He blinked and saw dozens of glowing eyes staring at him from all sides. For a second he forgot where he was, until he noticed the tiny homes built inside the thick roots of the tree. The walls shimmered with blue moss and the air smelled like sweet fruit. He was inside the tiny alien's hidden village. The same little leader from last night climbed up a small rock near Eli's knee and said, "You safe now, Giant Protector. The chief wishes to see you." Eli rubbed his eyes and smiled weakly. "All right, lead the way." The villagers cleared a path for him, their soft lights glowing in wonder. He had to crawl on his elbows to fit through the tunnel leading to the main chamber. It was beautiful, like something out of a dream. Tiny crystal lights hung from the ceiling, and little streams of water flowed between their miniature houses. Every piece of furniture was hand-carved from bark and shell. At the center stood a tall platform made of woven leaves, and on it sat an elder alien with silver wings folded behind his back. His body glowed faintly gold, showing age and wisdom. The villagers bowed as he spoke in a calm voice. "You are the one who fought the hunters," the chief said, his tone respectful. "You saved our kin. You have the strength of a storm, yet the heart of peace. For that you have our gratitude." Eli lowered his head slightly, trying to be polite. "You don't have to thank me. Anyone would have done the same." The chief's eyes sparkled. "Not all giants would. Most destroy, few protect." Eli felt a strange mix of pride and sadness at those words. "Where I come from," he said softly, "we try to help the weak. Or at least, we should." The chief nodded slowly, then raised a hand. A small cup made from a shell was brought to Eli. Inside it was a glowing blue liquid that looked like melted stars. "Drink," said the chief. "It will heal." Eli sniffed it carefully, then took a sip. Instantly, his tiredness faded. The wounds on his arms stopped aching. He blinked in surprise. "That's incredible." "It is the sap of the heart tree," explained the chief. "It keeps our people alive when the world turns against us." Before Eli could ask more, the ground trembled slightly. A wave of fear spread through the small crowd. The chief looked at the ceiling and frowned. "They are near again," he whispered. "The hunters?" Eli asked quickly. The chief nodded. "Yes, they will not stop until we are gone. They are large, cruel creatures that believe small life has no right to exist." Eli clenched his fists. "Then I'll fight them again." "You can't keep hiding like this forever." The chief sighed deeply. "We have fought for generations, human. We are few and they are many. You saw their size, their teeth, their claws. You are brave, but even you cannot fight an endless storm." Eli looked around the small village. He saw children hiding behind mushroom lights, elders repairing broken weapons the size of needles, and mothers carrying small, glowing infants in their arms. Every single one looked scared but hopeful. He knew then that he couldn't just walk away. "I won't let them destroy you," he said firmly. "If they come again, they'll have to face me first." The chief looked up at him silently for a long moment. Then very slowly he bowed. "You are one of us now, Giant Protector." A small cheer spread through the chamber, soft but full of heart. The tiny aliens touched their hands to their chests in respect. Some threw glowing petals at his boots. Eli smiled awkwardly but felt warmth in his chest. It was strange, but he felt at home among them. Later that evening, the little villagers prepared food for him. Tiny fruits, small roasted insects, and crystal nectar. They sat around him, telling stories of old wars and fallen heroes. Their voices were soft but brave. One small girl asked, "Giant Protector, why you help us? You not from here?" Eli looked into the tiny firelight and said, "Because no one deserves to be hunted for just existing. You deserve peace. Everyone does." The chief smiled faintly from the shadows. "You speak like a leader, human." But before Eli could answer, the ground shook again, harder this time. Dust fell from the roof and the lights flickered. The chief's calm face turned cold. "They found us." Screams filled the chamber as villagers ran to hide. The chief pointed to the tunnel and shouted, "Go! Protect the young!" Eli drew his plasma knife, its blue glow lighting the dark. His heart pounded. He crawled back toward the surface, hearing distant roars above. When he reached the tunnel's mouth, he saw fire burning the grass. Black smoke rose into the orange sky. Huge shapes moved in the smoke, tall, reptilian, and angry. The hunters had returned. Eli stood tall above the hill, gripping his weapon tight. "You picked the wrong village this time," he muttered. Behind him, Hundreds of glowing eyes peeked from the tunnel, watching, trembling, believing. The human stepped forward to face the monsters. The real battle was about to begin. The fire burned across the grasslands like a wave of red light, the air filled with smoke, screams, and the terrible roars of the hunters. Eli stood at the entrance of the tiny village, his plasma knife glowing blue in his hand. The heat touched his face, but he didn't move back. He could see them, 3 tall reptilian hunters moving through the smoke, their armor made from bones and metal scraps. Their eyes were blood red and their teeth shone like knives. Eli's heart pounded, but his mind stayed sharp. Behind him, the tiny aliens were hiding in their tunnels, whispering prayers to their ancestors. He turned his head slightly and said, "Stay down. Don't come out until I say." Then he stepped forward. The first hunter saw him and hissed, "A human here?" Its voice was low and rough. It raised a spear made from crystal shards and threw it with deadly speed. Eli jumped aside, feeling it slice through his arm. Pain burned, but he didn't stop. He ran straight at the creature and slammed his shoulder into it. The impact sent both crashing to the ground. The second hunter swung a long tail and hit Eli's back, throwing him several meters away. He rolled in the dirt and quickly stood up again, his knife sparking blue light. He could hear the frightened voices of the tiny villagers echoing below. He had to protect them no matter what. The hunters moved closer, their shadows tall and sharp in the firelight. Eli breathed deeply and grabbed a piece of metal debris from the ground, part of an old shipwreck half buried in the soil. He used it as a shield. The next spear hit it with a loud clang, breaking in half. He charged again, slashing at the nearest hunter's leg. The plasma blade cut deep and the alien screamed in pain. The smell of burning flesh filled the air. The creature fell to one knee, roaring. Eli finished it with one strong strike to the neck. The second hunter jumped from behind, trying to grab him. Eli turned and hit its arm with the knife, but it was too strong. It threw him down and pressed its clawed foot on his chest. He gasped for air, struggling to push it off. The creature leaned close, its breath hot and foul. "You protect the weak, giant. You die for them." Eli's vision blurred, but his hand found a small metal pipe beside him. He drove it into the creature's throat. The hunter screamed, falling backward. Eli coughed, stood up again, and wiped the blood from his mouth. Then he heard another sound, tiny but fierce. From behind him, small glowing lights rushed out of the tunnel. The tiny aliens had joined the fight. Dozens of them stood on roots and rocks, firing miniature energy darts. Their weapons were small, but their aim was perfect. Blue streaks of light hit the third hunter, distracting it long enough for Eli to move. He grabbed a heavy rock and threw it with all his strength. It hit the creature's chest, breaking its armor. The alien roared in rage, charging at him, but Eli stood firm. At the last second, he stepped aside and sliced across its back. The hunter fell, howling before collapsing in the dirt. Silence returned. The wind carried away the smoke. The grass was still burning in small patches, glowing like dying stars. Eli stood among the fallen hunters, breathing hard. His arm was bleeding, his shirt torn, his hands shaking. But when he looked back toward the tunnel, he saw hundreds of tiny faces looking up at him with awe. They started to cheer, softly at first, then louder. Their voices echoed like a song through the night. "Protector! Protector!" The chief came forward, his golden wings glowing faintly in the firelight. He bowed deeply before the giant human. "You have saved us again, brave one. The hunters will not return soon. You fight like 10 warriors." Eli gave a tired smile. "Let's hope they don't come back." But the chief's eyes were serious. "They will. They always do. They hunt what they fear, and now they fear you." The word sent a chill through Eli. He looked around at the burning grass, the blood, and the tiny village that had nearly been destroyed. He knew this wasn't over. As dawn began to rise, the tiny villagers worked together to repair what was broken. Eli helped move fallen roots and rebuild the entrances. The little ones followed him everywhere, laughing softly, trying to mimic his deep voice. When the sun finally rose, painting the world gold again, the chief called everyone together. He climbed onto a tall root, raising his staff. "We have faced death and survived," he said proudly. "And it was the human who stood between us in the end. By our oldest law, such courage must be honored." The crowd murmured, curious. Eli frowned. "Honored how?" The chief smiled knowingly. "Tomorrow we shall give you the greatest gift our people can offer." Eli blinked. "What gift?" The chief only smiled wider. "You will see, Giant Protector, it is tradition." The crowd cheered again, and Eli stood confused among them, not realizing that the next day would change his life forever. The morning sun rose gently over the golden plains. Smoke from the burned grass still floated in the air. But the tiny village buzzed with new energy. The danger had passed for now, and the people of the small tribe were celebrating survival. Eli sat near the large tree roots, bandaging his arm. He was still sore from the night before, but his heart felt light. For the first time in weeks, he heard laughter around him. Tiny aliens danced on glowing leaves. Children played with crystal marbles, and music made from shells and reeds filled the air. He smiled. "Guess we made it through," he muttered. The tiny leader, the chief, approached him slowly, wearing a cloak woven from silver threads. Behind him walked a small group of elders carrying baskets filled with blue petals that sparkled in the sun. The chief stopped in front of Eli and bowed deeply. "Giant Protector," he began, his voice calm but full of respect. "Last night, you saved not only our homes but our future. You have given our people hope again, and by the law of our ancestors, such courage must be honored." Eli scratched his neck nervously. "You already thanked me, Chief. You don't need to do more." The chief smiled kindly. "It is not a choice, human. It is our way." Eli raised an eyebrow. "All right then. What does your way say?" The chief turned to the crowd and lifted his staff high. "By the law of our people, a hero who saves our tribe from destruction must be bound to us by the bond of spirit and heart." The crowd cheered. Blue petals filled the air like rain. Drums started to play, deep and rhythmic. Eli looked around confused. Bound how?" The chief stepped aside, and from behind him came a tiny alien girl, no taller than Eli's hand. Her skin shimmered with soft lavender light, and her eyes glowed like moonstones. Her hair, if it could be called that, was made of fine silver threads that sparkled when she moved. The chief smiled proudly. "This is Lyra, my daughter. She will be your companion, your life bond, your mini-wife." Eli blinked. For a moment he thought he had misheard. "My what?" The crowd clapped and cheered louder. Lyra blushed and looked down, holding a tiny flower between her fingers. Her voice was soft and sweet. "It is our custom, Great One. You saved our people, so I will share your life, your food, and your home." Eli stood up, almost tripping over a root. "Wait, no. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I don't need a wife, especially not a tiny one." The chief only laughed. "It is not a matter of need, Protector. It is honor. You cannot refuse without dishonoring us." Eli looked at the smiling faces around him. Every single one of them was watching proudly, expecting him to accept. He sighed and rubbed his forehead. "This is crazy," he whispered. Lyra stepped forward, her little hands trembling slightly. "I promise not to be a burden. I will care for you, and you will never be alone here." Something in her voice stopped him from saying no. It wasn't just custom, it was sincerity. She truly meant it. Eli took a deep breath and knelt down, bringing his face closer to her. "All right, Lyra," he said gently. "If this makes your people happy, I accept." The crowd exploded with joy. Drums beat faster and flower petals covered the air. Lyra smiled brightly, her eyes glowing pink for the first time. The chief raised his staff. "From this day forward, the human and the daughter of the chief are bound in spirit. May their strength protect our future." Eli laughed softly as tiny hands tossed petals at his boots. He never imagined his first alien friendship would turn into this. Later, when the ceremony ended, Lyra sat on his shoulder as they walked through the field. Her small laughter sounded like wind chimes. "You are tall as a mountain," she said playfully. "I will need wings to reach your face," Eli chuckled. "You sure you want to be my partner?" "I'm a lot bigger than you." Lyra looked at him seriously. "Size does not matter, Giant Protector. Heart does." Her words hit him deeply. As they reached the edge of the forest, Eli saw dark smoke far in the distance. His smile faded. "That's not good," he muttered. Lyra noticed it too. "The hunters never stop," she whispered. "They follow what they fear." Eli stared at the rising smoke, then looked down at her. "Then they're afraid of us now." Lyra nodded slowly, her glow turning soft blue. "And they will come again. But next time I will not hide. I will fight with you." Eli smiled, proud and amazed. "You're brave, little one." She placed her hand on his cheek. "Not brave, just bonded." As the suns began to set behind the mountains, their light turned the grass golden again. A new bond had been formed. One strange, one powerful, and one that would soon be tested in ways neither of them could imagine. The giant protector had gained not just allies, but a tiny partner whose courage would soon change everything. The twin suns rose again over the vast golden fields, but this morning felt different. Birds with crystal wings flew above, singing softly, while the tiny villagers prepared food and decorations around the big tree. Everyone looked cheerful and full of life. Everyone except Eli. He sat near the pond, splashing water on his face, trying to clear his thoughts. His reflection in the still water looked tired and confused. "A mini-wife," he muttered under his breath. "What does that even mean?" Behind him, a small voice replied, "It means we are life-bonded now." Eli turned around quickly. Lyra stood on a smooth stone, her soft lavender glow shimmering in the morning light. She wore a delicate new dress made from petal fibers, and her tiny silver hair sparkled like sunlight on water. Eli sighed and smiled weakly. "You really take this seriously, don't you?" Lyra tilted her head, curious. "Should I not? It is a sacred bond for my people." He rubbed the back of his neck awkwardly. "Where I come from, marriage means something else. It's between, same-sized people." She laughed softly, the sound like bells in the wind. "Your world is strange. But our bond is more than size, it is spirit." Eli leaned back against a rock, unsure how to argue with that. She was kind, gentle, and somehow wise beyond her tiny appearance. As the day went on, Lyra followed him everywhere. When he carried wood to fix the burned huts, she sat on his shoulder, giving instructions. When he went to gather fruit, she pointed out which ones were safe to eat. When he tried to rest, she brought him a small drop of glowing nectar, insisting it would refresh his mighty heart. At first, it felt awkward. But slowly, Eli began to realize something. Lyra wasn't just following him out of duty. She truly wanted to help. She was curious about him, always asking questions about his home, his ship, and the stars. "Do all humans live alone?" she asked one evening. Eli chuckled. "No, not all. I just prefer quiet places. Easier to think." "Then maybe you were meant to find our quiet world," she said softly. "Even fate can hear silence." Her words touched something inside him. He didn't reply, just smiled faintly and kept working. But peace never lasted long on Varela. That night, as the stars glowed brighter than usual, the alarm bells of the tiny village rang, a soft but sharp sound made from shells. Lyra froze, her eyes turning bright blue. "They're here again," she whispered. Eli jumped up, grabbing his plasma knife. "The hunters?" Lyra nodded. "They found us again." He ran toward the surface, careful not to crush the tunnels under his boots. The air outside was colder than usual, and the grass swayed under a strange wind. Shadows moved near the horizon. 3 new hunters bigger than the ones before, their armor thicker and their eyes glowing brighter red. Eli's blood boiled. "They don't give up, do they?" Lyra climbed onto his shoulder, clutching his collar tightly. "Please be careful, Protector." "They came for me this time." He looked at her in shock. "For you? Why?" Lyra hesitated. "They think the chief's daughter carries the Heartlight, a power that can destroy them. They will not stop until they take it." Before Eli could answer, a plasma bolt flew past him, burning the grass. He ducked. The hunters had already begun their attack. Tiny villagers rushed out of the tunnels with their glowing dart guns, but their shots barely scratched the enemy's thick armor. Eli stood tall. "Lyra, get back underground." But she shook her head firmly. "No, you protect me and I protect you." "That is the bond!" Her voice glowed with strange power, and before Eli could say another word, her body shone bright like a small sun. A wave of energy burst out from her, forming a shimmering barrier around both of them. The hunter's shots hit the barrier and bounced off harmlessly. Eli stared in shock. "Lyra, what are you doing?" Her voice was weak but steady. "The Heartlight responds to danger. As long as I believe in you, it will protect us both." Seeing her trembling, Eli quickly stepped forward, his knife blazing with blue energy. "Then I'll make sure you don't need to use it." He ran straight into the fight, blocking a spear strike with his arm guard and stabbing one of the hunters in the chest. The creature roared and fell backward, shaking the ground. The second one attacked from the side, but Eli threw his knife, hitting it right in the throat. The third hunter saw Lyra's glow and lunged toward her, but Eli caught it mid-jump and slammed it into the ground with all his strength. Silence followed. Only the wind moved. Eli panted heavily, his chest rising and falling. He turned to Lyra, who was kneeling on his shoulder, still glowing faintly. "You okay?" She nodded weakly. "Yes. Thanks to you." He smiled tiredly. "No, thanks to us." As the villagers came out to cheer again, the chief appeared, eyes wide with shock. He looked from Eli to Lyra and then whispered, "The heart light has awakened. The bond is real." Eli frowned. "Bond? You mean?" The chief smiled gently. "When a human accepts one of us by heart, not by words, their souls unite. You are no longer just our protector, human. You are one of our kind." Eli stared at his glowing hands, feeling warmth pulsing through them. He didn't understand it completely, but one thing was clear. This wasn't just tradition anymore. Something real had connected him to her. As the stars shined above them, Lyra leaned against his neck, smiling softly. "See, giant protector? Now we are truly linked." Eli couldn't help but laugh. Guess being married to a tiny alien isn't as strange as I thought. But deep down he knew. This bond would soon be tested harder than ever before. The village glowed under the soft silver light of twin moons. After the fierce battle, silence returned, but it was not a peaceful one. Every villager looked up at Eli with awe and fear. The chief's words still echoed through the night air. The bond is real. Eli sat near the great tree roots, breathing deeply. His palms still shimmered faintly blue, pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The energy from Lyra's heart light had touched him. He could feel her presence even when she wasn't speaking. It was like a soft voice inside his mind, gentle, warm, and calm. "Are you all right?" The thought came suddenly, not through his ears, but straight into his head. Eli looked around. "Lyra, did you just talk in my head?" She stood on a rock nearby, her tiny form glowing like a firefly. She smiled shyly. "Yes, the heart light connects us now. You can hear my thoughts when I call." He rubbed his forehead. "That's new," she giggled softly. "It means our bond is strong. You and I share one link, one light." Eli stared at her, amazed. That explains the glow, I guess. But deep inside, he also felt something strange, a rush of emotions that weren't his own. Worry, hope, care. He realized those were hers. Their minds were truly touching. The chief soon approached, his golden wings faintly fluttering. "Giant protector," he said respectfully. "The hunters will not stop. The moment they sense the heart light, they will send their strongest." "We must prepare," Eli nodded. "Then let's train. Let's fight back, not hide." The chief smiled sadly. "Our weapons are small. Our hands are few." Eli looked at his glowing palms again and stood up. "Then we make more. You have your heart light and I have my strength. Together, we can turn this place into a fortress." And that's what they did. For days, Eli and the tiny aliens worked side by side. He lifted fallen stones and built walls around the village. The small ones dug tunnels and crafted glowing traps from crystal powder. Lyra guided them all, using her light to power small energy shields around the entrances. Sometimes Eli would stop and just watch her. She glowed brighter than anyone else, her eyes calm but determined. She never complained, never rested for long. "You work too hard, Lyra," he said once, smiling down at her. She looked up, her glow softening. "So do you," he chuckled. "Yeah, but I'm bigger. I can handle it," she crossed her tiny arms. "Then handle me telling you to rest." Eli laughed out loud, and for the first time in days the sound of joy filled the air. But that night, everything changed. Eli woke up suddenly, feeling a cold pressure in his chest. His heart raced. He could feel something coming. He grabbed his weapon and stepped outside, the night wind brushing against his face. The stars above looked strange, dimmer, almost trembling. Lyra appeared from the shadows, her light flickering. "You felt it too?" He nodded. "They're close." A sound echoed from the distant hills, a deep rumbling roar that shook the ground. The villagers woke in panic. The chief raised his staff, shouting orders, but before anyone could react, a massive shadow moved across the sky. A new hunter ship descended, 3 times larger than any before. Its engines screamed as it hovered over the fields. From its open bays, dozens of dark shapes dropped to the ground. Lyra grabbed Eli's thumb tightly. They sent an army this time. Eli looked at the falling creatures, his face hard. "Then they'll regret it." He placed Lyra gently on his shoulder and activated the plasma knife. "Stay close. Tell me where they're coming from." "I will guide you," she whispered. Her light brightened and suddenly Eli's vision sharpened. He could see through the smoke, every movement, every heartbeat. It was like her power was inside him now. He charged forward, shouting as he swung his weapon. One by one, the hunters fell. The villagers fired their energy darts from cover, hitting weak points that Lyra called out through their telepathic link. "Left flank," she shouted in his mind. Eli turned and threw a rock, crushing 2 hunters at once. "Got them." "Behind you." He ducked just in time, stabbing another attacker. The glow around them grew stronger the more they fought together. It was as if their bond fueled their strength. When the battle ended, the ground was littered with defeated hunters. The ship above them began to rise, retreating into the clouds. The night fell silent again. Eli looked around, breathing hard. "We did it." Lyra placed her tiny hand over his cheek, her glow soft like moonlight. "No, we did it," she said with a small smile. He smiled back, feeling warmth in his chest. "You're right. Guess we make a good team." From the edge of the crowd, the chief bowed deeply. "You have done what no one ever has, human. The hunters fear this bond now." But Eli wasn't celebrating. He looked up at the sky where the ship had escaped. He knew it wasn't over. Something about the way it retreated. It wasn't defeat. It was planning. Lyra sensed his worry through their link. "You feel it too," she whispered. He nodded. "Yeah, that wasn't the end. They'll come back with something worse." She held his finger gently, her light brightening. "Then whatever comes, we'll face it together." Eli smiled tiredly but confidently. "Together, huh? Guess I can live with that." As dawn began to rise, their glow faded slowly into the sunlight. The giant human and his tiny glowing wife stood side by side, ready for whatever would come next. But far beyond the hills, deep in the shadowed mountains, something ancient stirred, something that even the hunters feared. The next battle would not just test their strength, it would test their very bond. The next sunrise was quiet, too quiet. The golden fields that once danced with light now felt cold and still. Birds no longer sang, and even the air seemed heavy. Eli stood on the hill beside the great tree, staring at the horizon. His instincts told him something terrible was coming. For the past few days, he and the tiny villagers had rebuilt their defenses, repaired tunnels, and strengthened walls. But deep inside, Eli knew it wouldn't be enough. The last hunter ship hadn't fled out of fear. It had fled to warn someone, and that someone had now arrived. A dark shape appeared in the sky, larger than anything Eli had ever seen. It wasn't a simple hunter ship. It was a mothership, covered in black metal with red veins glowing like fire. The sound of its engines shook the ground. Even the mountains in the distance trembled. The chief's voice was full of dread. "That is the Hive Lord's vessel. He commands all hunters." Eli gripped his plasma knife. "Then I'll talk to him directly." "No," shouted Lyra, who stood on his shoulder, glowing brighter than ever. "He doesn't talk, he destroys. His kind wiped out whole planets. If you face him, you might not come back." Eli looked at her gently. "If I don't face him, your people won't come back either." Lyra's eyes filled with light but also fear. Through their bond, Eli could feel her heart pounding like his own. She whispered, "Then I'm coming with you." He smiled faintly. "Didn't expect you to say anything else." Moments later, the sky opened with thunder as the mothership landed nearby. The grass flattened under its power. A massive creature stepped out, taller than any building, covered in scales that looked like molten rock. Its eyes glowed red like burning suns. The Hive Lord, when it spoke, its voice cracked the air. "Human, you protect insects that should serve us. Leave them and I will let you live." Eli didn't move. "They're not insects. They're people. And I don't serve monsters." The Hive Lord laughed, a deep, cruel sound. "Then you will die with them." The ground split open as hundreds of hunters charged forward. The tiny villagers screamed, their weapons glowing. Lyra's heartlight flared so bright that the night turned to day. Eli felt her energy flow through him like a storm. He shouted, "Let's end this." With every heartbeat, the connection between them grew stronger. Eli's plasma knife burned brighter than ever, and Lyra's light wrapped around him like armor. The hunters swarmed, but Eli moved like lightning. Each swing of his weapon released waves of glowing energy that burned through their ranks. Tiny soldiers fired from the tunnels, and the chief shouted commands. The whole valley turned into a battlefield of fire and light. The Hive Lord roared and struck the ground with a massive claw, sending a shockwave that threw Eli backward. He crashed into the dirt, his chest burning. Lyra flew from his shoulder, landing hard near a rock. "Eli," she screamed, crawling toward him, her glow flickering weakly. He forced himself up, blood dripping from his mouth. The Hive Lord stood over him, laughing. "You fight well, little human, but this world is mine." Eli spat and grinned through the pain. "Not today." He reached out to Lyra with his hand. Their bond flared again. The light from her chest flowed into his, merging their energies one last time. The glow was so bright that even the hunters stopped, shielding their eyes. Eli shouted, his voice echoing across the fields. "You wanted a giant? Here's one." A burst of blue-white light exploded from him and Lyra together, spreading like a wave across the battlefield. The energy hit the Hive Lord directly, shattering his armor and burning through his body. The giant creature screamed, its roar fading into dust as it dissolved into ash. The hunters froze, their red eyes dimming. One by one, they dropped their weapons and fled into the sky. The mothership shook violently before bursting into flames, disappearing beyond the clouds. Silence returned once again. Eli fell to his knees, breathing hard. His glow faded slowly, his strength leaving him. Lyra landed on his shoulder, her tiny hand resting on his cheek. "You did it," she whispered. He smiled weakly. "No, we did it." The chief and the villagers gathered around, their voices trembling with joy. "The hunters are gone. The hive is broken." As the first rays of sunlight touched the fields again, Lyra looked at Eli with soft eyes. "What will you do now?" He gazed across the valley where smoke rose and life began to return. "Maybe rebuild. Help you all start again. Guess I've got a home now." She smiled, tears glowing in her tiny eyes. "Then I am home too." He lifted her gently and held her up against the rising suns. Her glow mixed with the light, forming a beam that reached the sky like a promise. From that day on, the story of the giant protector and his tiny glowing wife spread across the galaxy. A story of courage, love, and a bond so strong that even the stars remembered their light. And somewhere on the golden plains of Varela, two different hearts continued to beat. One human-sized, one no bigger than a thumb, but both shining as one.